The end is nigh. The end of the fishing off season, that is. We're approaching the beginning of April. The water's starting to warm up. It's not quite there yet, but that walleye bite's going to be on soon. It's a little bit cold out there today, even though it's a nice, bright, sunny day. So today we're going to take a look at how to make a bucktail jig. It is really nice to have something a little bit different that we can throw out the walleye when they're being shy and we want them to bite. Let's take a look at some of the tools we need to make our bucktail jig. A fly tying vise. You don't need to break the bank on this, but do remember that you get what you pay for. If you have a keen eye, you may notice that mine has been repaired. I found that when I was clamping it to tables, it was leaving a little bit of a mark right here. And I found that when it was made at the factory, this little piece right here wasn't crimped in as well as it should, and that's what made those little marks. So when I tried to fix that, I ended up breaking this tab off, and then I had to braze it back on. And I remembered that it's been a while since I've brazed, as this ever so kindly showed me. If you are going to get an inexpensive one, just be aware that there are some downfalls to them. We need a bobbin for holding our thread. Our thread threads through it. Can you use the name, the noun, as the verb? I think you can. Our thread goes through our bobbin, and that's what allows us to nicely wrap it around our jigs. Only need one, but it is helpful to have a few different ones for your different colors of thread. Different threads. These are fly specific threads. I did spend the money on these instead of just trying my home threads. In theory, these should be a little bit more suited for the task at hand. This one right here is not actually a thread. This is lead weight, so if we needed to add a little bit of weight to get our flies down further. This is more so for flies than it is for our bucktail jigs. This particular one right here is my favorite, just to add a little bit of flash to our jigs. Something to catch the fish's eye. Head cement, or super glue, or some people even use nail polish. Small sharp scissors are an absolute must. A whip finish tool. These can be bypassed if you don't feel like spending the extra money on them, but they make things a lot easier. And a bodkin. That is a fancy word for a needle that has a fancy handle to it. This is for applying our head cement or our super glue. We need our jig heads. Kind of hard to make a bucktail jig without a jig. If you like to pour your own, this is really nice because you can save the ones that turn out with a slight defect. This one doesn't have much of a shoulder on it for holding plastic baits, but it'll work really nicely for making bucktail jigs. And finally, we need some bucktail to make our bucktail jig. This was a nice little pack I picked up, has a couple of different colors, so we can mix it with some different thread colors, different jig heads, and get quite a few different results. First thing we're going to do, pick out our jig head, secure the hook in the vise, make sure that it is nice and tight. Every vise works a little bit differently, but there's usually some type of adjustment down here so that you can determine how tight you want this for your different size hooks. Obviously, our 4/0 hook on our summertime jig is going to be a little bit thicker than those tiny little hooks on our winter jigs. Next, we'll pick the color of thread we want, load it up in our bobbin, and then wrap it around the neck of our jig. With this one here, I'm going to do a little bit extra to help get it up onto the neck since I had a defect in it. If we were using a jig that didn't have that defect, we could just go back and forth a little bit. This gives it a nice base for the bucktail to bite into. Now, I like to build my bucktail jigs with maximum durability, so I am going to use super glue. Fly head cement works very nicely as well. The fly head cement's not quite as rigid as what the super glue is. The downside to the super glue, though, is it tends to wick more into the materials. So if we're building tiny little delicate dry flies, we definitely want to go with the head cement, but for our bucktail jigs, super glue it is. And I like to add a little bit to start. I know a lot of the fly tires will only add it on at the end. And don't go crazy with it, if I get any out at all. Maybe I should have prepared a fresh thing of super glue for our video. There we go. I like to apply just a little bit here to help that thread bond. When you do it that way, you just have to watch because your bucktail will stick to that. I'm going to use some chartreuse bucktail. And you can see here I started at the front and I'm just cutting it back a little bit. You don't want to overdo it. The initial instinct is to put lots and lots and lots and lots of bucktail on it, and that will not present very nicely for the fish. We want this to look natural. The idea is that somehow this creation is going to mimic a bait fish. So put a couple of wraps around it. I want to get up a little bit closer here to the head. I'm going to spread the bucktail around as best I can. And then do a couple of wraps. I always like to add a little bit of flashing in there. That is absolutely gorgeous. I kind of want to eat that myself. So let's pull some extra out. And again, you don't want to overdo it on the flashing. Just enough to mimic those bait fish, something to catch the fish's eye and try to trigger that predatory instinct. So I'm going to wrap it around. And then pull this flashing back. And a few more wraps to secure it. So it's still a little bit sparse. So at this point, let's have some fun with it. Let's go with this darker bucktail. I haven't used up a lot of that yet. And get some of the longer stuff down here. I think that's a bit longer. We'll keep the darker on the top. Will the fish actually like it? Do they actually care? I don't know. But I like it. I'd eat it. It's got a pretty nice start there. So now what we need to do is trim away the excess up here by the head. There are some really skilled fly tyers out there, and they will get very, very, very finicky with their jigs and their flies, and they do a absolutely wonderful job. For this purpose though, close enough, just like a horseshoe or a hand grenade, is going to take care of it for us. Okay, now here we could just add some super glue, make sure we get it all the way around and leave it at that, but the proper way to finish off a fly is the whip finish. So we're going to do that and then we'll glue it together. I flipped the jig back around here as I find it much easier to do the whip finish with my right hand than I do with my left hand. Okay, so what we're going to do here is basically create a number 4, and we're going to want to bring it around multiple times. 3, 4, that should be good there. And if we let the thread come off and pull it tight, now we have a very secure whip finish. We'll trim our thread, add the glue, let it dry, and go fishing. I hope that was as much fun for you to watch as it was for me to make. Hit that like and subscribe button, leave me a note in the comments on what you want to see next. I will see you out on the water.